You know that warm, fuzzy feeling you get from doing a genuinely good deed? That little self-congratulatory pat on the back from the universe. I haven't felt that in a week. Now, whenever I think about it, it just feels like acid churning in my stomach. It all started as most modern tragedies do, with me scrolling on my phone too late at night. I was on this niche online forum for financial tech professionals. You know the one, the place where we all go to complain about legacy systems and post terrible, industry-specific memes. And there it was, a post from a guy named Kevin Madsen. It was an absolute heartbreaker. He'd written this long, gut-wrenching message about being laid off from some mid-level analyst job and being on the hunt for nearly a year. A whole year. He talked about his savings dwindling to nothing, the shame of telling his family he got rejected again, the soul-crushing experience of being ghosted after a final round interview. It was raw and desperate, the kind of post you either scroll past quickly to avoid the secondhand despair or you feel a deep, uncomfortable pang of recognition. For me, it was the pang. It hit a nerve hard. I remember being that guy. I remember what it felt like to be fresh out of my internship, sending hundreds of applications into the digital void, eating instant noodles and just praying for a single callback. So I did what any sleep-deprived, slightly too online person with a mild savior complex would do at 1 in the morning. I sent him a private message. I told him I'd been there, that it gets better, and that I'd be happy to take a look at his resume and cover letter, no charge. Just paying it forward, you know. He replied almost instantly, so grateful it was almost painful to read. He sent his documents over, and that right there was the moment I sealed my fate. Clicking open that Word document was, without a single shred of exaggeration, the stupidest and most catastrophic decision of my entire adult life. Kevin's resume loaded, and at first glance everything seemed normal. It was a standard, slightly desperate-looking document. The formatting was a bit dated, the font choice was questionable, was that. Calibri, but the content was there. He had a decent work history, a list of technical skills, the usual stuff. I started reading through it, my editor brain switching on, ready to trim the fat and punch up the language. But then I hit the experience section, and the first little alarm bell, a tiny, almost inaudible ping, went off in my head. He listed a project he'd worked on at a company called Omnicorp. The way he described the objective, streamlining interdepartmental data flow for Q3 financial reporting, was so generic it could have been anything. But the specific bullet points under it, something about them felt familiar. A specific phrase, utilized a proprietary Python script to reduce data redundancy by 18, pricked at my memory. I shrugged it off. Corporate speak is a universal language of nonsense. We all end up sounding like the same broken record. I kept reading, and then I saw it. The project's internal code name, Project Nightingale. My heart didn't just sink, it felt like it dropped through my stomach and hit the floor. The air in my apartment suddenly felt thick and cold. 5 years ago, during my senior year internship at a company called Innovatic, I worked on a massive, high-pressure project. A project that was supposed to be my golden ticket to a full-time offer. Its codename was also Nightingale. No way, I whispered to the empty room. It's a coincidence. Well, it has to be. Omnicorp and Innovatic were direct competitors. Fierce rivals even. It was plausible, I told myself, that they were working on similar initiatives and by some cosmic fluke, landed on the same bird-themed codename. It happened, but the feeling of dread was no longer a tiny ping. It was a loud, insistent clang. It wasn't just the name, it was the specific metrics he claimed as his own. The 18, redundancy reduction, a subsequent bullet point about achieving 99.5 data accuracy post-implementation. These numbers weren't just similar to the ones from my project. I felt like I knew them, I felt like they were mine. I tried to shake it off, telling myself I was being paranoid, that I was pattern matching where there were no patterns, but I couldn't. The initial warmth of helping a stranger was gone, replaced by a cold, creeping unease. Something was profoundly, fundamentally wrong with this resume, and I had the sickening feeling that it had something to do with me. That feeling wouldn't leave me alone. It was like an itch in the back of my brain that I couldn't scratch. I closed his resume, telling myself I'd look at it with fresh eyes in the morning. But I couldn't sleep. The name Project Nightingale just kept echoing in my head, tangled up with the ghost of my own past ambitions. Around 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep. I swung my legs out of bed, the wooden floor cold against my feet, and walked over to my desk. My main work computer was a sleek, modern laptop, but the key to this mystery, I knew, was buried somewhere in the digital graveyard of my old external hard drive. It was a clunky, brick-like thing I hadn't plugged in for years, full of college papers, bad photography, and somewhere in its labyrinthine folders, my entire professional life from that era. After a frantic 10 minutes of searching for the right cable, the drive whirred to life with a reluctant groan. I navigated through a maze of forgotten folders. Fin 4, a one final paper, photos, Mexico trip, random downloads. And then I saw it, a folder that made my breath catch in my throat. Internship Innovative 2019. I clicked it open. It was a digital time capsule. Weekly progress reports, presentation drafts, code snippets, email chains I'd saved as PDFs. My hands were shaking slightly as I opened a file named Nightingale Final Report Draft V3 docx. And there it was, in black and white, my words, my work. I pulled up Kevin's resume on the other half of my screen and began to compare them line by line. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just similar, it was a goddamn copy-paste job. The 18 redundancy reduction, the 99.5 data accuracy, a specific, awkwardly phrased bullet point about cross-functional synergy that I remembered my manager making fun of me for. He had lifted my work, my accomplishments, and slapped them onto his resume under a different company's name. The room started to feel small, the walls closing in. Why? How? The only way he could have had access to this level of detail was if he had been there. My mind raced back to that internship. Innovatic's program was competitive. They hired a cohort of about 10 interns every summer. We all worked in the same open-plan office space. And I remembered something else, a detail that had seemed irrelevant at the time. Innovatic and OmniCorp, their biggest rival, often recruited from the same pool of universities. Their final round interviews were usually held in the same week. It was common for candidates to be in the running for both. A new, much more terrifying theory began to form in the pit of my stomach. What if Kevin Madsen wasn't just some guy who happened to work at OmniCorp? What if he had been an intern at Innovatic with me? I scrolled through his resume again, my eyes scanning for any mention of Innovatic. Nothing, it was wiped clean. He had listed OmniCorp for that exact time period, summer of 2019. He was hiding it. He was actively, deliberately hiding the fact that he was ever there. The question was no longer just, how did he get my work, but what the hell is he trying to cover up? My heart was pounding now, a frantic drumbeat against my ribs. This had moved beyond a weird coincidence into something personal and deeply unsettling. I had to know for sure. My fingers flew across the keyboard, my mind a frantic blur of search terms. I opened my old university email account, the one I hadn't properly logged into since graduation. I typed Kevin Madsen into the search bar, nothing. Then I tried Innovatic and Intern. Hundreds of emails flooded the screen. I started scrolling, my eyes burning from the screen's glare, scanning subject lines from 5 years ago. Intern welcome lunch, reminder midterm presentations, mandatory HR session. And then I found it, an email from my old mentor, a guy named Frank. The subject line was simple, Ray, your offer. It was dated the last week of my internship. I remembered the gut-wrenching dread of seeing it pop into my inbox. I remembered opening it and feeling the world fall out from under me. I clicked it open again, my stomach twisting into a knot. The memory was so vivid it felt like it was happening all over again. The email started with pleasantries, Frank praising my work on Project Nightingale, my technical skills, my dedication. And then came the but. However, he had written, we've decided not to extend a full-time offer at this time. While your technical performance was exemplary, we received some concerning feedback during the anonymous peer review process that we are required to take very seriously. A fellow intern submitted a report that raised flags about your collaborative abilities and overall team fit. My blood ran cold as I read the next line. Frank, in what I now realized was a misguided attempt to give me constructive feedback, had quoted a specific phrase directly from the anonymous report. He'd written, I'm only sharing this so you're aware of the perception. The report stated that you often work in isolation and display unsettling antisocial tendencies that could be disruptive to a collaborative team environment. Unsettling antisocial tendencies. That phrase had haunted me for years. It was so bizarre, so clinical, so utterly alien to how I saw myself. I was quiet, maybe a little shy, but antisocial. It had planted a seed of doubt in my mind that had taken years to uproot. It made me second-guess every interaction in my first real job. It was the reason I had to start my career at a no-name company for half the pay instead of at Innovatic. It was a professional scar. I stared at the phrase on the screen, the words blurring through a haze of anger and old pain. Then, on a hunch, a wild, desperate shot in the dark, I minimized the email and pulled up the documents Kevin had sent me. Not his resume, but his cover letter. I read through the first paragraph, then the second. It was full of the usual corporate fluff, and then I saw it. In the third paragraph, where he was trying to spin his lack of team projects into a positive, he had written, "While I am a dedicated team player, I also possess a unique ability to work in isolation, which prevents me from being disruptive to a collaborative team environment." It wasn't just the sentiment. It was the structure, the specific clunky, almost robotic phrasing of disruptive to a collaborative team environment. It was a perfect echo. A mirror image of the phrase that had torpedoed my career. I leaned back in my chair, the hard drive still humming, the two documents glowing on my screen. The air left my lungs in a single, ragged gasp. It was him, the desperate, unlucky stranger from the forum. The guy I was trying to help. He was the anonymous snake in the grass who had stabbed me in the back 5 years ago. He was the reason for everything, and he had just handed me the murder weapon. Update, oh my god, my hands are shaking so bad I can barely type this. I think I'm going to be sick, like, for real. It's him. I found the old email from my internship supervisor. The exact bizarre phrasing he used in the cover letter he sent me, the one I was supposed to be helping him with, it's right there in the anonymous HR report that got me blacklisted 5 years ago. Disruptive to a collaborative team environment. It's his signature, it's his goddamn signature. The guy I felt sorry for, the guy I was about to pour my energy into helping, is the same guy who told my first ever employer that I had unsettling antisocial tendencies. The irony is so thick I feel like I'm choking on it. Out of all the people on the internet on that entire forum, he had to ask me for help. What are the actual odds? Is this some kind of sick cosmic joke? I'm just sitting here staring at his stupid, lying resume that I was about to spend my free time fixing. Fixing for him, and I don't know whether to scream or cry or just start laughing until I pass out. What do I even do now? Do I confront him? Do I just ghost him? Do I burn his entire professional life to the ground with the information he just handed me? I feel like I'm losing my mind. The initial shock, that white-hot, dizzying wave of adrenaline, slowly subsided over the next hour. It drained away, leaving behind something far colder and heavier. A pure, undiluted rage. It settled deep in my chest, a block of ice. This wasn't just an old grudge. This was the ghost that had haunted the first few years of my career. The self-doubt, the paranoia, the feeling that I was somehow fundamentally broken for a professional environment. It all had a face now, and that face was Kevin Madsen. My mind became a whirlwind of possibilities, each one more vindictive than the last. My first impulse was pure chaotic destruction. I could go back to the original forum post. I could reply to his plea for help with a detailed, evidence-backed exposé, post the screenshots, the side-by-side comparison of my work and his stolen bullet points. The email from my mentor, the cover letter, everything. I could ruin him publicly right there in front of the peers he was so desperate to impress. Then I imagined his response, the denials. The claims I was a crazy ex-colleague with a vendetta, the inevitable forum drama that would ensue. It would be messy, and in the end it would just be my word against his. It wasn't clean enough. My next thought was to confront him directly, to reply to his email not with a polished resume but with a single question, remember me from Innovatic, to watch him squirm. To see what lies he would spin. But what would that accomplish? It would give him a chance to get ahead of the story, to delete his posts, to cover his tracks. It would give him power he didn't deserve. No, neither of those options felt right. They were too emotional, too impulsive. The damage he'd done to me was quiet, professional, and devastating. My response, I decided, had to be the same. So I sat down at my desk, the first rays of dawn starting to filter through my window, and I got to work. I channeled all of my fury, all of my pain from the last 5 years into a single, focused task. I optimized Kevin Madsen's resume. I spent the next 3 hours turning his document into a masterpiece of deception. I didn't just polish the bullet points he stole from me, I amplified them. I used every trick I knew to make them shine, to make them the undeniable centerpiece of his entire work history. I rewrote his professional summary to perfectly align with the accomplishments from Project Nightingale. I tweaked his skills section to create a flawless, irresistible narrative of a man who was an expert in exactly the work I had done. I was building him a Trojan horse, and he was going to wheel it right through the front gates of his own career. When I was done, I attached the file to a new email. My hands were steady now. "Hi Kevin," I wrote, "took a look at your documents. I've made some significant improvements to highlight your core strengths. I think this version is much stronger and should get you some serious attention. Best of luck with the job hunt. I have a feeling you'll be successful this time." I hit send. Then I opened a new email. This one was addressed to two people. The first was Frank, my old mentor at Innovatic. The second was the company's current head of HR, whose name and email I found after 20 minutes of determined searching on LinkedIn. The subject line was simple: Information regarding a 2019 internship candidate, Kevin Madsen. I didn't make accusations, I didn't vent my anger. I just laid out the facts, cold and clinical. I attached Kevin's original resume and the cover letter he sent me. I attached my final report for Project Nightingale. And I attached the original rejection email from Frank with the quote from the anonymous review. I wrote a brief professional summary of the events, concluding with, I am providing this information for your records. I am not seeking any specific action, but felt it was my professional duty to ensure you were aware of this discrepancy. I hovered my mouse over the send button for a long, long time. This was it, this was the point of no return. I clicked it. Final update, it's done. I sent everything to my old company's HR. My former mentor, Frank, replied within an hour. He was horrified and apologized profusely. He said he remembered the incident clearly and always felt something was off, that the anonymous report felt vindictive and out of character with my performance. He confirmed he was escalating this internally with HR and their legal department, saying that resume fraud tied to a previous internship was something they took extremely seriously. I don't know what will happen to Kevin. I know he won't get a job at Innovatic, that's for sure. And if they decide to take action, he'll have a hard time getting a job anywhere else in this industry again. The professional world is smaller than people think. Word gets around. The thing is, I don't feel good. I don't feel the triumphant, fist-pumping vindication I thought I would. I just feel empty, hollowed out. I got my justice, I guess. I won. But winning doesn't magically erase the last 5 years. It doesn't fix the gnawing self-doubt he planted in my head, the doubt that made me accept lower salaries and second-guess my own abilities for so long. It doesn't give me back the career path I was supposed to have. I just exposed a liar and a fraud, and all I feel is tired, so incredibly tired. The rage is gone and there's nothing left in its place. I keep thinking about his desperate post on the forum. Maybe he really was at the end of his rope. Maybe this was his last shot. And I was the one who took it away. Does that make me as bad as him? I don't know. Thanks for listening to me, everyone. I appreciate all the support. I think I'm going to log off for a while. I need to figure out who I am now that the ghost has a name.